a global public speaker, a licensed minister, and founder of her own nonprofit, and also a passionate mentor for first-time writers. Today we welcome Vivian Phillips, known for turning personal tragedy into a transformative mission. Turned into a spiritual leader, Vivian is the author of 2 books and the upcoming The Unshakable Faith. Her work calls believers to live more purpose-driven lives. Her message is radical, heartfelt, and rooted in action. Vivian's life is a journey of faith and service, from the inner city of Milwaukee to stages all around the world. We welcome her to Writing Inspiration with Marquee Books. Hello, Vivian.
Yay.
How are you?
Hi, Daniel. I'm excited to be here.
Me too. So, Vivian, you're now a published author yourself. So tell me, how did everything start? What did inspire you to become a writer?
Well, first of all, Daniel, thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest on your show. I'm excited to share my story. I had the pleasure of meeting you because I was looking for somebody to do a cover for my next book. It's kind of hard for me to imagine that I'm about to release my second book. It's interesting. I think I've been writing for some time, and but it wasn't until I got involved in a writers group that I really began to see that I had something to give. I had something to say. I had something to write. And being in that group, they really helped me to see my potential, and they helped me develop my skill, and they encouraged me to get it done. And there was some systems that were put in place that I don't think without that group, I would probably still be an unpublished author. Yeah, so that's kind of how it got started.
When did you start writing your book for the first time?
My first book, I started in 2015. I spent 3 years doing research on, and released it in 2017. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and when did you start your second one?
My second book I started maybe a year ago, and I'll be releasing it this summer. This is my first book, Revival in the Pews. And it's available on Amazon.
It's very pretty.
Yeah, thank you. The subtitle of that book is Uncovering the Plot to Destroy Your Destiny. And I've kind of classified it as my wake-up manuscript for the 1.7 billion people who profess to be Christians, but have never been taught how to be one. That's what I discovered in my research. And so my book is how do you step fully, wholeheartedly into your faith when your religious institution isn't providing you with the things that scripturally you should be given so that you could walk powerfully in your faith.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose it's very religious, if you want to say it like that too.
Yes.
A routine. a routine, not really something about learning for most people.
No. Yeah, part of what I do is help people understand the difference between being religious and being spiritual. You know, being religious is about following a set of rules and lining yourself up with those denominational rules, generally speaking. You know, the Baptists do it this way, and the Catholic do it that way, and the Muslims do it this way, and the Jews do it that way, and so forth and so on. But that doesn't give you a relationship with the Most High. And so I kind of make this distinction for people between religion and relationship. And spirituality is about a relationship with the Most High. And so that's the fundamental distinction.
Yes. So, were you inspired by any other author? It can be a movie, a book, anything.
Actually, no. I was inspired by pain. And I think pain is one of the greatest inspirations. Unfortunately, most people don't have anybody around them to help them turn that pain into passion or power or, something positive. And so my sister passed away at 48 years old from complications of diabetes. And she wanted to fulfill her purpose. And every time I saw her, I lived in Arizona, she lived in Wisconsin. Every time she and I connected or I went back home to visit, she would just constantly say she wanted to fulfill her purpose. And she used to go to church, regularly, trying to find her purpose. And so when she passed away and she didn't fulfill her purpose, I was devastated. I just thought, I don't understand. How is that possible when she went to church on a regular basis? And she was going to church looking for her purpose. I think she thought it was going to fall out of the sky.
Yeah, that's a misconception, a very common one.
Yes, people should be able to find or identify their purpose through the process of going to church. But because the institution of church, when it's about just religion and not relationship, then it's very difficult, if virtually not impossible, for you to find what your spiritual calling is in the pews. Because I say most of the people who go to church are what I call pew warmers and churchgoers. And statistically, 50% of them have never made a confession of faith. And so there's a perception that you will find your purpose, your spiritual gifts, and those things you should, but people don't. So when my sister passed away, I was confused. And I really set out, first what I did is because I believe I knew the Bible and I believed a lot of what was in it. And one of the things it talks about is that we can raise people from the dead. So, Daniel, I tried to raise my sister from the dead at her funeral.
Wow.
And it was powerful. It was one of the most powerful faith attempts I've ever made. And while she did not get up, the demonstration of faith caused a revival. And most of the people there were shocked that I even made the attempt, when the scripture says that raising people from the dead is an elementary principle of your faith. It's elementary, it's basic, it's not even deep.
I always thought it wasn't exactly literal. I always thought it meant something like spiritually dead.
Well, there's both, because remember in the scripture, Jesus said that you would do what I did and greater. And a part of what he did, he raised people from the dead. Now, he didn't raise everybody from the dead, but, whenever the circumstances were appropriate, a young lady, a woman, he attempted to do that. But he also resurrected the spiritually dead. Well, that day at my sister's funeral, there was a resurrection of the spiritually dead. That's what caused revival. Those people who were revived in their faith, revived in their hope, revived in what's possible in a relationship with God through the demonstration. And so for me personally, I didn't care if she got up or they got up. Somebody was getting up. Yeah. And that's what happened. And so I was trying to resolve a conflict of faith that I saw in other people as compared to what I knew. And in that whole process, when I realized that there's 2.1 billion Christians on the planet, and I was a Christian at that time, I'm not a Christian today. I'm a spiritual person. I'm more aligned with African spirituality now. And so the conflict I realized is that most people who profess to be Christians don't read their Bible. They just go to church. They're caught up in tradition, the traditions of men. They They don't understand how to walk out their faith, how to walk in the principles of God. And when I've realized that the greatest form of neglect happening in the world is the people who sit in those pews that are not given what the scripture said they should be given. If nothing else, they should be discipled, according to Matthew 25:21, when with the Great Commission, when it says make disciples. And so most people are not disciples. Most people don't know their spiritual gifts. Most people don't know how to walk in their faith. They don't know how to, heal the sick. They don't know how to cast out demons. And those are very, very basic principles of Christianity. But most of the people who profess to be Christians don't know how to do it. And so I set out on a journey through my book to equip and empower people who were Christian. Since then, though, I have enlarged my territory. It just does not include Christians, because 40 million people have left Christianity because it don't work. And they are walking in spirituality, not Christianity, but they still want to walk in the demonstration of their faith. They still want to understand their spiritual gifts. And so now, I target people who want more from their religious beliefs. And you can be Muslim, you can be Jewish, you can be Catholic, you can be whatever you want to be. Because I'm not here to tell you don't do this or don't do that, because that's what Christianity does. I'm not a Christian. I'm a woman of great faith who moves in great exploits, who is not standing in judgment or condemnation of anyone. Who am I to say what you should or should not? But I can tell you what I've learned, and I can show you what I've done, and I can coach and minister to you on how to live a greater demonstration of what you call belief in God.
So, Vivian, tell me, what is your day job, or are you a full-time writer?
Well, I'm a full-time vessel for the Most High God. That's what I do full-time. I am licensed as a chaplain. I am licensed as a minister. I do public speaking around the world. I am a corporate chaplain. So I provide chaplaincy for corporations, for nonprofits, for entrepreneurs. I have a healing clinic called the Pew Clinic. I have a nonprofit called the Hub. The Hub stands for Help for Underserved Believers. My corporation is called People Empowered Worldwide, with the acronym Pew. So I play on Pew a lot, because I have what I call Pewniversity. Instead of university, I have Pewniversity. And my educational institution is to graduate people from the pews. That's what we're doing. Because if we can get the people off the pews and active in their faith, in their communities, in their families, and in the world, we can change the world. Don't you think, Daniel?
Yeah, and actually, well, what I can see is that you're quite busy. You have a lot going on.
I do. As a matter of fact, Daniel, I'm in Florida right now because I just filmed a television episode that I have coming out this fall.
Oh.
Yes.
Like an interview, or like you acting something?
Well, it's called Legacy Makers.
Okay.
And it's about people who are walking in the manifestation of their legacy. And so my episode in Legacy Makers is called Beyond the Pew. And what I'm doing in my episode is engaging people in a conversation of what happens after you leave the church. What happens after you have done praise and worship, and you've sang in the choir, you've helped with children's ministry, you've done all these things inside the four walls of the church. Then what happens? Because Jesus said, go, G-O, which means leave the church and go into the highways and into the byways. And he said, take care of the prisoners and the the poor and the motherless and the fatherless, and through the love that you show one another, people will know that I'm real. And that's not, you can only do so much of that in the pew. So my goal is to have a mass exodus from the pew, and for people to go from the pew into purpose. That's what we're going to do. So I'm creating a pathway to move people out of the pew and into what I call the promise, into purpose, into their spiritual destiny, into their divine gifts, into their calling. I mean, Daniel, I'm an inner city girl from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who moves in great and mighty exploits, which is what I'm going to talk about in my new book that you did the cover of, that I think is so awesome. Look at that cover.
I'm happy to hear that.
This book says Unshakable Faith.
Oh, you're already printed the book.
Look, Daniel, look. It's a book.
Oh, I didn't expect you to already print the cover. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, well, actually, I had some mock books made for my television episode, and so I actually have 5 copies of this, but the pages are actually empty because I'm finishing the book, as you know. But this book is really about activating people in the demonstration of faith, and how, when, as I say on the back, what if faith was more than just belief? What if it was the key to transforming every aspect of your life?
I think I have heard that before.
Yeah, because you typed that. You did that. That's why you heard it. So yeah, there's a way, in the scriptures, it talks about a more excellent way. There's a more excellent way for us to do this thing called life. And unfortunately, because we are socialized into capitalism, we give more credit to making a lot of money and buying a house and buying a car. But faith is a spiritual currency, which is what I talk about in this book. And when you learn how to use that currency, everything that you do with money, you can do with faith. But everything that you do with money, you cannot do with faith, if that makes sense. I mean, money can't do everything that faith can. Faith can open doors that money cannot. Faith can heal you in a way that money cannot. I mean, if money could heal you, all the rich people would not be dead, because they use
at
their
least
money.
Getting weird sicknesses.
Yeah. They would use their money, but see, faith can heal you. I'm going to talk about all the things that I've done. Stop time, help people with cancer, open blind eyes, heal people who walked in 30 years of pain, extend people's lives. I just got a testimony today of a man who was in a really bad car accident in Africa, and they were going to amputate his leg. And he told his team in Africa to find me. And when they found me, they told me what happened. And I got on my phone and I stepped into my faith and I started praying. I sent him over 10 1-minute messages on Messenger, because it was going to Africa and you can only talk for 1 minute. And well, at that time. And I prayed the prayer of faith, and today that man is walking on that leg. But I'm a very special person. The scripture says many are called, but few are chosen. I'm one of the chosen. But being chosen is accessible to anybody who's willing to do the work. And this book will show you, it's a manuscript. It's an outline for how do you do what I did, which is really how do you engage in what the scripture said you could do. I'm just going to show you that I'm a real person who did it, and then I'm going to show you how you can do it too. And it's going to be all of like $19.
When are you expecting to release that book?
It will come out this summer.
Okay.
There's a guy by the name of Rudy Maurer. Rudy is one of the top marketers in the world, and he has a podcast that goes to 25,000 people. And so I'm debuting the book on his podcast.
That's great.
Yeah, so that'll be this summer. Actually, your podcast will come out before his podcast.
Yes, as I mentioned, in 2 weeks.
Yes, so you'll be the first person.
Well, we're mostly talking about the whole concept more than the book, so I think it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I have this question. Did you ever think this kind of thing will happen in your life? Like, that this path as a writer to send this message to people will define your current life?
Not initially, Daniel. Initially, I just wanted to write what was in my heart. And I thought it would be helpful for people. And I think, generally speaking, that's kind of the motivation for people when you initially start writing. It's like you got a story you want to tell, or you got something you want to share, or you want to do it in memory or honor of someone. And I think those are all amazing ways to step into writing. I had somebody tell me one time, they were like, well, how are you going to become an author? And I was like, well,
Writing.
I said, I was like, well, every author wrote their first book. They had to write the first book, and I was like, I know how to write. And I think people get discouraged because they have too many complexities around. It's like, write what you got to say, and then find an editor to do all the particulars around making it all make sense, putting it in right order if you don't know how to do that. But I tell people, because I have a publishing company and I used to publish other people's books, but I don't do that anymore because I have too many of my own books to write. And so now I only publish my own books. But when I talk to people, and I will counsel people on the process of writing their first book. I like first-time authors. That's really my target audience, is first-time authors, because I can soothe their nerves around becoming an author.
I was going to ask you if you have any advice for new writers starting right now.
Well, that's what I'll say. The first thing is get everything that's in your head out. Get it out on paper. Make sure it's typed. Doesn't have to be in any particular, or just get it out of your head before you can do anything, before you start looking for a publisher, before you start trying to find an editor, before you get what's in your head out. That is the most important thing. That's the first step, because until you do that, you there's nothing to talk about. We got to have something to work with. And when it's in your head, it's just a thought. The other thing I'll say that I learned, I work with this lady named Janine. I work with Janine. I have a friend named Jelaine and Janine. But Janine is works with me, and she works with another company. But we used to have this writing retreats. And when in the writing retreats, we couldn't make any corrections. And so I think what happens with writers is they write and they try to correct, especially first-time authors. And you shouldn't do that. You should just write. Get it out. And once you get it out, then you can start correcting, rearranging, ordering. Otherwise, it becomes a never-ending journey.
I agree.
Yeah.
Infinite editing.
Yeah. Yep. So those two pieces of information I just gave, people pay me hundreds of dollars to hear. So we just gave it to them for free. Yes. So take it and run with it. That's what they need to do.
Yeah. Tell me, what was the most difficult thing you have to do when you start writing your book?
I think the most difficult thing was dealing with people who were negative. Sometimes it's family members. Sometimes it's just colleagues or people that you're coworkers. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but most people who start a book never finish.
Yes, I don't know the optics.
Yeah. So authors, I always tell authors, you're part of the 2% club. You're in the 2% who started and finished. So people can be very discouraging to you, and you have to manage who you tell what you're doing, or you have to manage. At the time I was married, and while my husband wasn't discouraging, he wasn't encouraging, and even a lack of encouragement can be discouraging. So you have to determine for yourself, this is what you're going to do, no matter what anybody else says, no matter what anybody thinks. And then you have to set a date to get it done. And I think that's another area where people fall off at, because they don't set a deadline. And so, they just keep going and going, and then they just get discouraged and stop. So those are 3 pieces of invaluable advice.
Well, I was lucky because my editor set deadlines for me. So in a way that helped a lot when reaching the goals. So I understand the feeling. It is necessary to have some deadlines to keep certain control. Otherwise, you'll just procrastinate. Usually, that's the case.
Well, as they say, life starts lifing, and then you get caught up in it.
So, do you have like a writing routine? Pre-planning, plotting, improvising?
Well, couple things for me, and I think especially when you become a seasoned writer, you learn what works for you, and you gotta kind of keep yourself lined up like with that. For example, it's hard for me to write at night. I need to write when the sun is up. Something happens when the sun goes down that is very, very hard for me to write. The other thing is, I don't do outlines. I just write. I'm what I call a prolific writer. So when I sit down and I begin to, it's like it just starts coming to me, and then I just start writing. So I kind of organize my books after they're done. Yeah.
Actually, I did meet people like that too, so I know it's possible.
Yeah, but I know most people do outlines, but I don't do outlines.
No, that's pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah, it stifles me. It stifles me. The other thing is, I love to write in bookstores or coffee shops. And what's beautiful is you often see other writers in bookstores and coffee shops writing, and that's inspiring. Like it does something. So yeah,
I never had the experience. Maybe should try.
Yeah, especially Starbucks. A lot of people write at Starbucks. A lot of people write at Borders bookstore.
Yeah, I will prefer anything other than Starbucks. Okay. They're too expensive.
Yeah. So it's kind of those things. Going places like that, it's a part of my routine. Making sure I write during the day is a part of my routine, and I'm not putting together an outline.
Hey, you mentioned how you named your first book. How did you name your second book?
Well, my first book actually had a different name.
Yeah, I think you mentioned.
Yeah, my first book I titled Mass Murder in the Pews.
What?
because people's destinies are dying on those pews. Their destinies are never seeing the light of day. And I thought the mass murder in the Pews was appropriate to what I was writing about. But then I felt compelled by the Spirit to make it more positive. And that's how I came up with the title. It was literally the opposite, revival. It's like an awakening, a lifting up, an encouraging. So I changed it to that. My second book was initially titled Unstoppable Faith. And I was having a conversation with my financial advisor, and who's also a mentor, who's a very, very wise man. And he was telling me a story, and he used the word unshakable. And when he said it, it really resonated with who I am. I'm more unshakable than I am unstoppable, because I think anybody could be stopped, And so I named it Unshakable Faith. The subtitle being the spiritual currency. It was like, because people are so caught in capitalism. When you're a person of faith, your faith and your walk with God should exceed capitalism. Capitalism shouldn't be at the top of your list. And so I wanted to bring another word to humanity, and that was faith as currency, and make it a commonplace word that people of faith started to use and activate, because it has to be activated, and then you have to be empowered in it, and then you have to mature in it. And so these are things I wanted people to know and understand, and how that if you engage in these things the way you've engaged in capitalism, you'll see a greater harvest. You'll see more profound results. You'll see, unimaginable things happen, and you'll be the conduit of it. That's the difference. You can't make more money. I mean, when I say make more money, I meet a lot of very, very wealthy people who are very sad and very miserable. They have a lot of money. And I'm not saying all rich people are miserable, because that's not true. What I'm saying is that people who don't have money are led to believe that having money is going to be the cure-all and be-all. And it's not true.
I see money most like a tool, so it just makes things easier. It's not, what solves everything. In the end, your decisions are what solve your problems, not the money. The money is just the tool you use to do that.
Right. Well, people, they don't really know that. And so talking about spiritual currency will allow me to engage people in a different conversation. It's like a different part of your brain when we talk about spiritual currency versus money. They're in the different hemispheres of the brain.
Between the two books, which one was the best experience writing?
I don't know that I would classify it that way, as much as they're different.
Yes,
they're different because I'm different. After you write and publish your first book, your experience with writing and publishing another book has less fear. It has less intimidation. It has less doubt, because now you've done the full cycle. And so now I'm not threatened by the process at all. I'm not concerned. I'm not worried. As a matter of fact, it's like, I want to hurry up and get this one done so I can do the next one. I got like 10 more to write.
So, do you have like any experience with a reader that you remember fondly?
Well, I went on tour with my book, my first book, and I was supposed to be gone for 2 weeks. And there were so many people moved by my book that I was gone for 5 months.
Wow.
I didn't think I was ever coming home.
That's that's impressive.
Yeah, everywhere I went, the people didn't want me to leave. But what was really exciting is they read the book before I got there. And so, we go places and then, you sign people's books and they take them away and they read them, right? Well, the people, because they knew I was coming, they got the books and they read them before I got there. So the impact of the book was much greater because I could speak to the things in the book and the people knew what I was talking about. So, I would be talking about something that was in the first section, and then they'd be like, you got to stay so we can do the sections, the second section. And then it's like, you got to stay. So I went to 5 different states, and each state I stayed for 4 weeks. And I was having sessions every week. And then I was meeting with people outside of those sessions. I mean, it's wild. I can't wait till my second tour.
That's a great mission. That will become missionary work in a way.
Yes, it really was. And I could do a movie on what happened. It was pretty amazing.
I wanted to ask, how do you deal with marketing? Do you have help or do you do it yourself?
I pretty much was doing it myself for my first book, but I won't be doing it myself for my second book. My first book, I'm getting ready to also launch the audiobook of my first book. So I've completed the audiobook. That was my first experience.
Oh.
And
are you narrating yourself or did you hire someone? Oh.
Nope. I narrated my own book. So I do plan to have a download on my website of things to do if you're going to narrate your own book and how to prepare for it. Because there was a lot more involved than I was really aware of or understood.
I have
heard.
I
think it took me about like 60 speaking hours or something like that to do it. But yeah, I narrated my own book, and I'll narrate this one too. As soon as I publish this one, I'll go and do the audiobook right away so that I can get that done. But it was, I mean, it's just amazing. That's all I can say.
Are you working already on your new book? I mean, like, do you have the idea already set for when you finish this one?
Oh yeah, I have the concept for the third book. The third book will be about my missions trips to Africa, and it's like a coming of age story. Yeah,
that will be a good movie too.
Yeah, it is a movie too.
When are you planning to go to Africa? Next year.
I was going maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years because I think it was 2022 with Dr. Chihambore Quayo, who was the former liaison to the African Union, from the African Union to the United States. And she was having a meeting with the president of one of the countries in Africa to talk about the return of people from the diaspora back to Africa. And I was looking forward to being one of the people talking to the president of that country about that. So I feel like I have these divine assignments. One of my assignments, which is going to be connected to my third book, is about that remnant returning to Africa and closing the 400-year gap of Africans being stolen from Africa. And so that'll be a part of my third book.
That sounds amazing, actually.
Yeah.
It's great that you have already everything planned in a way.
Yeah, it's pretty, and it's really just my life. These things that have happened in my life, going to Africa when the president and the king went to war and I was there, and the president threatened the king. And I mean, stuff like that you could have never told me I would be in the middle of. I'm from Milwaukee. Come on. But it makes for great books.
Well, yeah, actually, it sounded like a fantasy for a moment there when you mentioned the president versus the king.
No, but it's really true. There's newspaper articles about it. And I was there and I was in the middle of it. I mean, people were dying as I was making my way from the airport to a village, and they were trying to stop the king from moving physically. And I mean, we don't understand kingdoms in America because we don't have any here, but they have kingdoms in Africa. And when you have a king, you don't tell a king what to do. He's the authority of his own kingdom. So I mean, it's really, I don't know what's going to be more fascinating. My first book in the dead raising attempt is really that's a movie right there.
Yeah.
And this book, Unshakable Faith, is about all these supernatural exploits that, I mean, I've literally had people tell me, I don't believe that. And I'm like, you don't have to believe it. I'm just telling you what I did. And they're crazy, wild, unbelievable stories, but they're true.
Wow.
Yeah. But here's the thing, Daniel. Here's the thing. You don't have to have these kind of stories to write a book. If you want to talk about raising your children, or you want to talk about an experience that you had and overcame, you want to talk about something that you're passionate about, that you love birds, it doesn't matter. There's this is not good enough to be a book. Anything that you want to talk about that you feel is worthy of somebody else hearing about is sufficient for writing a book. Don't you think?
Anything can be a book. That's what I got to learn.
Yeah, I mean, you might
Anything.
not be writing a bestseller, but it's like the bestseller is like making it to the NBA. Well, we're all not going to make it to the NBA, but it doesn't mean that somebody doesn't want to hear your story or know what you like or love or passionate about, or what was your experience or what were your lessons. There's always someone out there who wants to hear what you have to say. Doesn't matter who you are.
And even if it's just one person, if you inspire that person to do something, you already succeed.
There you go. Well, you succeeded when you wrote it, right?
Well, yeah.
Everything else is icing on the cake.
Yeah. Can you share with us your social media so people can learn more about you and what you do?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and my website. And all of them are MsVivianPhillips.com. And that's VivianPhillips.com. On TikTok is _ and then Vivian Phillips. And then on Instagram is Ms. Vivian Phillips MS. And then my website is MsVivianPhillips.com.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Vivian, so much. Thank you for joining us today and for everything you said. Honestly, it was quite fascinating. It was a long episode. Like, really, most people usually doubt a bit to talk too much about their books because they don't want to spoil them. But on your topic specifically, I don't think it's important. Really. Anything, the more you say, the better.
Right. Well, it was a pleasure being a part of this. Thank you so much. I'm so glad I found you. Your work is everything that I saw in that video, your promotional video. You are that. You do an awesome job. I'm looking forward to doing other things with you that we're talking about. And thank you so much for your excellence. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, everyone, this was another episode of Writing Inspiration with Marky Books, and we say goodbye for today. Bye, Vivian, and bye, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.
Vivian has a lot to say today, and I can say for sure she was quite the passionate individual. No one can deny that. And thanks to her, we were reminded of certain things, like how it's better to just finish first drafts and not stop the flow just to fix things, especially in your first book, as doing this might raise your anxiety levels and make you too perfectionist to actually finish your book. Of course, we want a good work, But sometimes it's better to just finish your draft and then you can start editing, etc. Also, we were reminded that it's always better to own our own platforms. And never forget the marketing aspect of our job, such as Vivian endeavors to always make her name known. Well, thanks for joining us today. If you find this episode inspiring, like and subscribe and share this video. And give Marky Books a try in the link below. Have a nice day and see you next week. Bye.